Kravitz. If you have not followed his Triple H horse racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.
Good evening and welcome to episode 32 of Horsin' Around right here on the HHH Racing Podcast. I'm your proud host, Howard Kravitz, along with Saratoga special journalist from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and co-host of Picks and Ponies, Mr. Paul Halloran, and right below the bottom of the screen there, we've got co-host of Ben & Boozin, soon to be at the Ohio State University, Charlie Freeman. Guys, it's a grade 1 recap tonight. How are we doing?
Well, that's why we have Charlie's a grade 1 person, so I'm happy to be here with him.
Oh.
Hey, I'll take a compliment like that. Yeah, no, it's funny when you're saying soon to be at OSU because I've just realized that this week's Pettin' and Boozin' episode will be my last ever episode back in Illinois until I come back after senior year. The next, Illinois hosted episode, I'll be done with college, which is kind of crazy to think about.
That is crazy and very exciting as well, Charlie. Guys, what was really exciting was the racing this weekend. But very quickly, before we talk about that and recap it, everyone should listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor if you're not watching live or you don't want to watch on YouTube. Down below, Power Picks tip sheet, rocking and rolling. Saratoga only, Del Mar only. Noah Maher once again scores in the last race at Del Mar yesterday with a 7-2 shot. So hats off to him. Got a great website, hhhracingpodcast.com as well. We also just want to, our good friends at Adelphi Racing, get in touch with Matt Gutierre. Adelphi actually just had a piece of a $200,000 plus buy at the Fasig-Tipton sale, along with, I think, one or two other ownership groups, Paul. So Adelphi is starting to spend some real live cash at these sales. So check out Adelphi Racing, Matt Gutierre. They've always been sponsors of this show and great supporters as well. Of course, Adelphi Racing, home of Gem Mint 10 and soon to be Albany Stakes winner, Pandagate, coming up in about 2 weeks, Paul. Taking on Winstock.
I'll be there.
Taking on Winstock, I believe, from Baffert's Barn, plus a few others for the best 3-year-old New York breds in 2 weeks. Very exciting. Guys, we got a lot to talk about. Let's just jump right in. We're going to talk about the grade 1s from yesterday, Sunday. If you have any comments, please make sure you put them in the chat. I noticed there's a little bit of problem. I know I'm going to get in trouble by saying this. Let me see. For some reason, we're having a little bit issue with going live on X. I heard there's something going on X that, I don't know, tonight, right at the same time we're going on. I don't know why people wouldn't want to listen to us instead of some other interview or something that's happening, I heard. But anyway.
I don't even know. The greatest thing about this, Howard, is I have no idea what you're talking about.
All right, well, that's all good. Interesting. Our stuff's not working on X right now. Okay. Well, we're live on YouTube, so people can check us out on YouTube. Guys, we've got 4 grade 1s we want to talk about. Let me really quick see who's here. Sean Kane is here. What's up, Sean? Raven Cromley is here. Boy, we did not have to start school until Labor Day. Well, I had to start school today, Charlie. I started today. Students come Thursday, but the wonderful world of pregame, so to speak, meetings. Always a lot of fun. Jim Plars is here. It's hello, men and Katie. And Terry Frank said they crashed X. I don't know what's going on. But anyway, I'm not worried about that. Guys, let's jump right into the grade 1s. The first we're going to talk about is the 4-star Dave, won by one of my favorite horses in training. I don't know how you guys feel right now, but this horse ran his best race he ever has. I'm going to bring it up on the screen right now. Won by the very cleverly named Carl Spackler, who was fantastic, Paul and Charlie. The best race he's ever had, for sure. He gets his grade 1, gets a grade 1 for Chad, who, by the way, had never won the 4-star Dave, which is quite amazing. Paid $610. And I want to go to you first, Charlie. I don't know if you bet the race. I'm going to show the replay. But, I thought he should have been 6-5, 7-5. I just wasn't sure about him in Fleet, and More Than Looks was coming off a long layoff. When I saw 2-1, Charlie, I was looking at my chops. And although my weekend overall was not great, it was okay. This was my biggest win bet of the weekend. I will admit that. and Carl came through, Charlie.
Yeah, I didn't win much on it, but I did actually have a small exacta box. I ended up playing with Carl Spackler and More Than Looks. It kind of was just the way I saw this race going. I don't think it was that I necessarily thought Carl Spackler was, significantly better this field. I just thought in terms of where he was catching some of these other horses, like More Than Looks, as you mentioned, off the huge layoff. And then also with just the pure pace setup, I kind of just looked at where these horses are stylistically. And I know Autumn and Fleet is typically a little more forward, but also that's in longer distance races. So I kind of figured, the one would be alone on the lead and Carl Spackler would just sit right in behind. And this would just be one of those situations where everything kind of looked on paper like it would set up for Carl Spackler. And I agree with you. I thought accordingly, people would use that along with, how much this horse has been respected at being a Chad Brown horse. I thought this one and Autumn and Fleet would be neck and neck in terms of the odds on favorite and did not expect to get 2-1. And I thought More Than Looks still looked solid off the layoff. I just had a feeling that More Than Looks would ultimately, he would just have too much to do too late and Carl Spackler will get the jump. And that's kind of exactly what happened.
That is what happened. Paul, do you think people fell into the Appleby thing with Autumn and Fleet at 3-2, or did people underrate Carl Spackler? I mean, I thought the odds were a little bit strange in this race, to be honest.
Well, I'm looking. They were 55 cents apart, which isn't huge. And I think, to be honest with you, More Than Looks going at 5-2 surprised me as much as anything. Now, having said all of that, and Spackler was really dominant, More Than Looks might be down the line the best horse in the race. I don't want to sound stupid with Spackler running like that. More Than Looks is coming off a year layoff. Not a year layoff. Almost 10 months, right?
Yeah.
And was very rank. Even if you look at the comment in the race, tossed head, rank, 2, 3 path, 4 path. But so they really, really bet that horse. Autumn and Fleet, I'll tell you, my feeling about the Godolphins and the Applebys. If you were watching on TV, as I was, Howard, I'm sure you were, and you got Maggie's paddock report, I will tell you what, if there's ever been a more on-target person, it's just unbelievable. She is so good at what she does. Her husband's pretty damn good at what he does, too, by the way.
Well, I just tell everyone what she said briefly, Paul.
She said she didn't, Autumn and Fleet looked better the last time. She thought his weight wasn't up. His coat didn't look as good. And, and it's obviously her opinion, but boy, is it an informed opinion. And I actually, I was going to play the horse. I honestly thought because of the layoff, I thought it was with the layoff with More Than Looks. I really did think it was a 2-horse race. I thought Spackler had maybe a little more trouble than he needed to with Talk of the Nation the time before. But I just got right off of Autumn and Fleet. Of course, I try to get clever because I'm a clever guy. So I said, well, maybe Strong Quality will just keep going and hang on for second. So I played some exactas with Strong Quality, and I lost. That's not breaking news, but yeah, as it turns out, the way he ran, getting 2-1 on Spackler, he is really good, and Tyler rides him really, really well.
He loves this inner turf course, Charlie. This was his best race. We see the buyers there on the screen. He got a 104. He's an improving 4-year-old. Charlie, you're going to be at the Breeders' Cup along with myself, Paul perhaps as well. And Charlie, I know that rumor has it, Charlie, and Paul, you might be interested in hearing this too, that the Ben and Boozen boys might be engaging their first foray into the BCBC. And that is a serious live money contest. So, Charlie, put your BCBC hat on here. As of right now, is Carl Spackler a serious Breeders' Cup mile contender along with More Than Looks? Are these just nice Americans?
No, I think they certainly could be. I think for me, More Than Looks, I actually agree with Paul. I think especially off of that large of a layoff, to me at least, is the one with the most potential. But I think the other thing that makes it tough for me with Carl Spackler is just sort of the lack of consistency. Now, I know there's no efforts that you kind of look at with those figures and you scream, oh my God, he ran really poorly. But I think we can also agree. I know there was that race. It was like I think 2 or 3 back where Carl Spackler, we were all over it. Everyone on the show was all over Carl Spackler.
Yeah, in the poker.
Yeah, the poker. And it just was a poor effort that really, there was no excuses to run that poorly against Ice Chocolate, who just, essentially walked the dog to beat the field. So I think that's the question with Carl Spackler is, I still remember in the betting and boozing days way at the back when we covered this horse second time out at Gulfstream, this horse Rompton, we all thought he's going to be very special. So I think More Than Looks is the one I personally would want to go with, just because that was first off a massive layoff. The horse is ultra consistent. You don't really have to worry about those dud efforts, and also doesn't get the same attention as Carl Spackler, so you'll get a better price. But I think Carl Spackler, I don't think it's anything Chad or Tyler are doing wrong. They just got to find a way to get, these last 2 races, just continue to build off that form. And if they can, this is a horse I would be scared to play against.
Well, and Paul, this horse has that Tepin kind of quality where he's tactical, but he can explode late. If he likes tight turns, he's going to love Del Mar, Paul. I think between Carl Spackler, and by the way, I agree with you on More Than Looks, Paul, because I actually can make the argument More Than Looks ran just as well as Carl Spackler in this race, coming off the layoff. Did you see this final quarter, guys, that More Than Looks ran? How about 22-3 off a 10-month layoff? And that turf course was not firm, guys. They actually got a little rain there before the race. I think More Than Looks is a serious horse. Between Spackler, More Than Looks, Paul, and Johannes, a real nice horse out west, Europe is always I'm always going to default to the Euros and the Breeders' Cup turf races. The Americans could have a very nice hand in front of them in Del Mar in 2.5 months.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about it when whenever this race was supposed to be. I think it was supposed to be 3 weeks ago. But, More Than Looks ran the fastest final quarter in the Breeders' Cup last year, a tick faster than Master of the Seas. So, yeah, it's a serious horse. I agree. I'm not going to be lining up to bet any West Coast turf horse, although Innocent is pretty damn good, having watched her again the other day. But, we just don't know who's coming over. You just got to just put the pause on just a little bit. But I will say, Charlie, I get you on that race, but that race really looks like the one-off, It sounds to me like our friend Charlie lost on that race, and he's still being bitter, which I can appreciate and respect. But in fairness to him, and there was no excuse, Charlie. I was there. It is looking like, though, that was the exception, not the rule. And look at Chad Brown calling the shots. He certainly can ship out there, and it certainly makes for a more interesting turf race in the Breeders' Cup, whether it's the mile or the turf, when there are formidable Americans. And this race, the mile is a better opportunity than the turf. I think historically we know that Americans would have a much better shot in the mile. The turf, it's they pick a monster that's going to come, right?
Well, the other thing that gives me a little bit of pause, and we're going to move on, guys, is, Charlie, when horses get perfect trips in small fields, and we're going to see it at Colonial here in a little bit, I'm always a little bit dubious, guys. I mean, the visual was really impressive, but Spackler basically got a dream set up, and it's hard for me to imagine he can run faster than he ran, yesterday, although he is an improving 4-year-old. But, like, circumstances were so damn good. Like, I can't imagine something like that happening in the Breeders' Cup. In terms of that perfect kind of trip, I guess what I'm saying.
No, I completely agree. And again, I just think if you looked at every angle of this race, to me, again, at least for me on paper, it looked like the perfect opportunity for Carl Spackler to have a breakout, which I think could have been a combination from ability, but also, as you touched on, just the way that the race was going to work out. And I think you could legitimately argue everything possible was against More Than Looks, and the horse still ran huge. And again, I'm happy Paul mentioned it, because I was going to. The effort that More Than Looks ran at a huge price last year is something that should not get overlooked. And I think he's a horse that is truly consistent, but also improving. And I would not be surprised where he was such an underdog and not expected last year that he could continue to build on that and be one that could be dangerous next time.
No, it's talented horses. I'm excited to see what they could do. Guys, they're all going either to the Woodbine Mile, which is in about 4 weeks, or I'm personally hoping they're going to go to Keeneland because I'm going to be there for the Coolmore Turf Mile, which is about 6 weeks and only 4 weeks before the Breeders' Cup. Chad said that I guess Spackler had colic, Paul, last fall at Keeneland, and he's a little bit. Trainers are so fickle, aren't they? Like that is like Keeneland had anything to do with it, right? I mean, but whatever. We'll see. I think they're gonna have him going there anyway, Paul, just because I think they like little time after that race and a month before the Breeders' Cup. But anyway, we'll see, guys. It's gonna be interesting. The other Grade 1 yesterday at Saratoga, Paul. What a story! I mean, what an unbelievable story. Carson's run. I think the best way to talk about this race is to show this on the screen. Can you please tell everyone, Paul, what we're seeing right here?
Oh boy, yeah. So this photo was taken, I think, by me, by the way, on the backstretch at Santa Anita Thursday afternoon. Was it Thursday? Yes, Thursday afternoon of Breeders' Cup week. Of course, you'll recognize on the left is our good friend, the late, great Cody Dorman. And on the right is Carson Yost, and for whom Carson's run is named. Carson has Wolf-Hirschhorn syndrome, the same syndrome Cody had, which means statistically it was virtually impossible to have two of them on the backstretch at Santa Anita at the same time.
Amazing.
Carson's 30. He was 31 at the time, so he may be 32 now. And his dad, Wade Yost, was a classmate of Terry Finley of West Point Thoroughbreds at West Point, the military academy. And they named the horse for Carson. And I got another photo, Howard. If I could send you quick, if you really want to show.
You want to just go ahead and put it up to the screen. I'll make us all bigger there. You want to put it up to the screen? We can bring it up a little bit. There you go. Yeah.
Does anyone see what's behind Carson's run?
Oh, the rainbow. How awesome!
The rainbow.
That? Unbelievable.
And I know we won't mind sharing this. I was sent that by Kelly Dorman a little while ago.
Awesome.
This is going to make us all feel stupid unless you did bet this horse. He said Carson's father sent this to me last night. It was taken as Carson's run was near the finish line. He told me that all of them thought that Cody was smiling down on that horse during the race. After seeing this, I tend to agree.
Oh boy.
So there. So where do you find that in Formulator, Howard?
I mean, yeah, that'll be in the short comments. Cody's smiling in the short comment.
Yeah, but
he's not a superstar. He's not a superstar.
He ran huge, though. He ran huge, didn't he?
I'll tell you, he ran huge. I'll tell you who's turning into a superstar. Maybe that word is overused. Dylan Davis, Paul. And I'm going to talk about Dylan Davis in a minute. But Carson's run here is inside of my top choice in this race, deterministic. I think you like deterministic also. And look, he sort of bullied his way through, and he just outkicked them. And this is Legend of Time, who I was just against, and I'm just always going to be against this horse for Godolphin. I just don't think he's that good. And Carson's run just flat out ran him down fair and square. Deterministic getting up for third. The future is bright for this 3-year-old.
Yeah. He had that. He had the race at Aqueduct where he bolted on the far turn, I believe. And he had a very tough trip. That the photo that you took was shown the day before the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, I believe. And had a tough trip that day. But boy, I'll tell you that wasn't the deepest field ever. The Royal Majesty who was right there. Yeah, that horse isn't bad. And deterministic, I think, is ultimately going to prove to be a pretty damn good turf horse. Clement has him really moving on turf. And, Legend of Time didn't exactly run disgracefully. He got beat by 3/4 of a length, though he had no excuse. Carson's run ran him down. But just to your point, I think that was Dylan's 18th win, Howard, maybe. He is just attaboy. And in the good things happening to good people, it's great to see him on this horse. He is really. Oh, you're going to hold them up on the screen? You can.
No. I was a little bit blurry there. I was trying to fix the camera. Nope. Mr. Krauts did his homework, Paul. Charlie, let me give you some stats on Dylan Davis. I know, Charlie, you're pretty selective in the races and the tracks that you bet. I know you'll play New York sometimes, but I'm assuming you've been paying attention to what Dylan Davis is doing. Let me give you guys some stats on Dylan Davis. Last year, Saratoga 2023, Dylan Davis had 19 wins, out of 185 starts. So he's 19 for 185. He finished 9th in the standings with 2.1 million. Charlie, this year, again, last year he had 19 wins. This year he already has 18 wins, guys. There's still 3.5 weeks left of the meet, and he's done it in 90 starts. So 18 for 90 versus 19 for 185. Charlie, Dylan Davis can ride 95 more mounts, and all he would have to do is win twice to surpass what he did last year. He's 4th in the standings, Charlie. He is really turning into a very good jockey.
Yeah, it's something funny that I talked about. I think I remember talking to this at someone with the betting and boozing guys, where, as you touch, I bet New York. I obviously know, compared to someone like Patrick, who's from the area, he knows it better than me. But I'd always kind of noticed, and it was something I think I brought up to Noah maybe, where I said, this Dylan Davis guy, I keep seeing him ride on these bombs, and he gets, second or third on horses where on paper they have no business, and it's not because of the horse all of a sudden freaking out. I'm like, he keeps putting them in these wonderful spots and just gets these great trips. And like you kind of touched on with Carson's run there, he really looks like he's improved in developing of knowing when to push the button, which I think you could argue is the most important skill a jockey could have. You see all the time with Irad, with Flavian, especially on the turf, all the time with Johnny V, where you see these excellent trips, but you realize, it wasn't the horse, wired the field or saved all the ground on the rail, but you'll say they were caught in traffic and the jockey knew exactly when to just flip that switch and angle out or try to go through that gap. And that's the difference between winning and losing. And I think for me, that's the big thing I kept noticing is he would just always push the button with some of these bombs. And yeah, he wouldn't win, but he would come closer than he should have. And then eventually that got recognized more so this year than just last year. And he started to get some of these more, reasonable prices and horses where he could actually win with those efforts. And now I think he's actually starting to reap the benefits of just how good he is at executing these great rides. So I think he's such an underrated guy. And I think he is someone that more and more people who maybe are more casual to the sport and didn't know about him are going to get more and more familiar. And you'll start to see people saying, oh, Dylan Davis is aboard, and he deserves that recognition.
I totally agree, Charlie. And Paul, I think Richie Migliore is a bit of a mentor for him because of, the connection with Adelphi and Joe Migliore and blah, blah, blah. Dylan just not only seems really confident, but to Charlie's point, he's becoming more aggressive, Paul. And I just think, jockeys are just like athletes. When they get confidence, they're like, that hole's going to be there. They're more decisive. They get into less trouble. And obviously you got to have the mounts. But, he's winning at prices too, like Charlie said. So he's not exactly, first call for Chad or Todd. I mean, he's having a great game.
No, and he does get a lot of live mounts from the Clements, and frankly, until yesterday, the Clements have been off to a slow start.
That was their third win only in like 50 miles.
Right.
They've been a little bit quiet.
Yeah. A lot of they've been on the board quite a bit.
Yeah,
and I'm not. I voted, unbelievably, no trainers get in the Hall of Fame. I voted for him. He was on the ballot last year. I think he's a Hall of Famer, so I wouldn't worry. But Howard, what's ironic about this? We're talking about Dylan. It wasn't even the best Davis ride of the day because Katie delivered, I'm looking at it, in a nondescript $50,000 maiden claimer. Delivered a ride on Within View where she just, talk about bullying your way through. She just said, move over, boys. I am coming through. Giving trainer Rachel Sells has been 0 for 20 in her career at Saratoga. I can't imagine how happy she was yesterday. But, hey, look, it's a tough colony. We talked, our friend Junior was 2 wins for the first 2 weeks. He didn't forget how to ride. It's hard to win up there. He's now at like 11, including, some major stakes wins. So the thing about Dylan, Howard, where this helps is you do get on other people's radar. Or, not that you're not on their radar, but you're in front of mine. So now, on a day where 2 or 3 of them ship out to whatever, Del Mar for the Pacific Classic or whatever. Now, all of a sudden, there's a decent horse left behind that needs a jockey. He maybe now has a better chance of those pickup mounts from, if not the Chads or the Pletchers or whomever. So, hey, Saratoga kid, Saratoga Springs High School, hats off to him.
Real cool. I mean, he went out west for Jeez, I can't remember who he rode. He rode a
Oh
horse
yeah,
for
I
for
bet the hell
Dutro
out of that horse. I bet the
Yeah.
hell out of that
in
horse.
the Eddie Reed, I think. But anyway,
Yeah.
Dylan Davis is third grade one overall, guys, but that was his first in the United States. The other two were in Canada. Paul came with the research tonight. I got to do my thing. So anyway, Dylan, guys, Charlie, he is ahead of Franco, Jose Ortiz, Junior Alvarado, and Luis Saez. They are all behind Dylan Davis right now. The only guys in front, of course, are Irad, Tyler, and Flavian. So got to pay attention. Guys, let's go to Colonial for their two grade ones. And, you know, Charlie, I know you got a special place in your heart for the Arlington Million and the Beverly D. And I got to tell you, Paul, it still hurts. I just, you know, I know CDI is trying to do the right thing, Charlie, and I don't want to throw any shade towards the trainers or the horses that ran these races, but you had two small fields that were not very deep. You know, congratulations to everyone that won at Colonial, Charlie, but this is not the Million Day that you and I especially know and love. It's just not the same, man.
No, I completely agree. And for me, obviously, look, it hurts enough to hear Arlington in the name for Arlington Million because it's not there. But I guess I respect that they're trying to pay tribute. I think the bigger issue, like you were saying for me, is look, if they want to, try to keep the legacy alive to the, the people associated with those races, that's fine by me. But I would at least appreciate it if they could actually have large fields like they used to and provide exciting races to watch. Because for me personally, obviously, I'll always be a little biased and salty against it because it's not, at Arlington and it's not what it should be. But I just felt like both races were incredibly underwhelming. Like the excitement for me wasn't there watching them. The size of the fields wasn't there. The entertainment just wasn't there. And, again, as much as I wish it was at Arlington, the reality is if they had a large field that provided more excited racing, I think it's something where I would never get over it, but I would be more welcoming to it. Whereas the whole time I was just like what happened to the race I love? This is just awful respectfully, to me at least, it was awful to watch.
You guys are calling it the race is called the Million. I don't know why you're calling it by something else. The name of the race is the Million.
I agree. We don't need that first name at all.
Why are you two guys mislabeling it? The race is called the Million.
Paul, I don't mind. I want bigger fields, but I also don't want horses, 5 horses that are 80-1. I mean, I want competitive races. This is basically 2-horse race. You see Nation's Pride here, and William Buick is just unbelievable in the States. Integration, I will admit that I'd win bet on Integration just because I thought I was getting a little bit of a price. He's just simply not good enough. He's just simply not good enough in this race. Nation's Pride is just a better animal, period.
But Howard, I think I'm looking at the chart right now. You got a terrible price in relation to Nation's Pride. Nation's Pride even money, and that horse 6-5. There's a 20-cent difference between those
crazy.
Two horses. That's terrible value.
Well, I just thought it was a 2-horse field, and I wasn't sure. I thought Integration was more of a horse for course kind of, situation. But I
think Integration's good, and I'm glad Kendrick. Kendrick kind of won the Virginia Derby on this horse, which is we should talk about that later. That's the Virginia Derby is undergoing a transition, but. Yeah, I think Integration is pretty good. I don't think there's any galaxy in which he should be approximately the same price as Nation's Pride.
Let's talk Breeders' Cup a little bit, Paul. Nation's Pride is very good. I don't think there's any doubt of that. Did lose fair and square to Measured Time and Silver Knot. I don't know which Godolphins are going to be going to the Breeders' Cup Turf Classic. If Nation's Pride is one of them, can he turn the tables on those two, or do you just think he's a little bit of a cut below?
I don't think he's a cut below. However, I think he is a little bit in betwixt and between distance-wise. And I think Charlie has even said, I think ideal is up to this. This was
Smile quarter.
10 furlongs, correct. And of course, the turf is 1.5 miles.
Right.
Now, Howard, if you were trying to get an extra 2 furlongs out of a horse on turf, you would send him west, right? Put him on that firm Del Mar turf. It's going to be firm. I have a weather prediction, Howard. The turf at Del Mar is going to be firm for the Breeders' Cup. Okay,
I think that's fair.
So, that's a factor. And you mentioned it is a little bit of a different setup, and all of that I think will help him. And, you talked about Buick. Buick is, I think we mentioned it a few weeks ago, and I think it was on the show, or maybe it was at the table at Saratoga. I mean, Frankie Dettori is a legend. It must have been when I was at Saratoga. And they were in the same race. He's a total legend. He's still great, but let's not think that they're equal today. And William Buick he's elite. Okay, like Howard is an elite math teacher. William Buick is
Wow.
elite. And
I would just take a decent math teacher, but I appreciate that, Paul. It's
no,
very
I've
nice.
heard. I've done my
Yeah,
homework.
well, Charlie's calling me elite. He called you grade 1. Boy, Paul's in an awfully good mood today, Charlie. Who put some funny juice in his Cheerios this morning?
9 days until I head back out west on Route 90 and north on Route 87. I'm already getting excited. But no, so that's the only issue with me with this horse. But I'm pretty sure that Mr. Appleby will spot the right horses in the right places. He's not going to – if he doesn't think he's a 12-furlong horse, he's not going to throw him in just because of the breeders. He's not the only horse in the barn.
I have a feeling he is not going to be going to the Breeders' Cup Classic.
I don't think so either.
Turf Classic. I think he knows he's not quite as good at the distance, and Silver Knot's better, and Measured Time's probably better, and who else knows is better. We'll see. Let's talk about the last race, the Beverly D, which is always another great race that used to be at the Million Day, and is still on that day, just not at the beloved Arlington Heights Oval. Moira, Charlie, was in I'll tell you what, this was a small field again, but this was quite the throwdown in the stretch. I mean, if you're just a pure horse racing fan, it was very exciting. I'll show you the stretch run. Moira beats Fevre over. These are two nice, mainly Canadian-based horses. I thought Moira would win more comfortably if I had to be nitpicky. It was very close. You see the Beyer figs there on the page. Look, I mean, they're, high 90s, 98, 99. I thought Moira would take a step forward, Charlie, speed-wise. She didn't, although it was a slower pace. Again, these two are nice animals. I thought Moira would run like a 102, 103 and, be an outside Breeders' Cup filling mare turf kind of horse. I think she might have lost a little bit of a step. I mean, nice win. But again, if you're talking Breeders' Cup, Charlie, I just don't see it with either one of these two.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was hoping you'd throw the replay in because I wanted to point something out. For me, I was kind of, the horse won, so I don't want this to be us kind of like dogging on a horse that at the end of the day got the job done. And it was very exciting to watch them go back and forth. And as someone who's been a major critic to Fevre over, I have to give a ton of credit to this horse for showing heart and fighting back. But when we get to the stretch, I'll be honest, when I saw Mora, they're neck and neck, the one's been pushing Fevre over the whole way. And to me, it looks like, the 4's being asked. It still looks like Mora's pretty comfortable. When I started to see the 6 range up and they're head to head to each other, I think I was probably thinking what you guys both thought, and correct me if I'm wrong. I thought the 6 off this turn was just going to roll on by. I'm not
right
saying
here, right?
Right, exactly. Over. Right there off that turn. I'm thinking, I'm not saying the horse wins by 6, but I'm thinking, I think the 6 wins by 2 to 3 comfortable lengths in hand, doesn't have to be asked too much. And then right when we get to here, I started thinking, is Fevre over really about to just dig in gamely and get this? And then it looks like, obviously Mora re-engaged and was able to, grind it out. And again, you have to give credit to the horse for, not quitting and re-engaging and getting that job done. But for me, again, in a field of this quality and, second time off that big layoff, I just expected, like what you were saying, I thought off that turn was just going to go blow by fast, really, set in stone how talented of a horse Mora is and show that this is one to watch out for come Breeders' Cup. And I just didn't personally see that. Now, I'm not saying it's not possible because, I doubted that horse too back and the horse freaked off the layoff. But I agree. I was pretty disappointed with what I saw off that stretch. I was more impressed with Fevre over, who did all the dirty work to fight back after I thought there were a few disappointing efforts from Fevre over at a short price. Then I was impressed with Mora for kind of doing what we expected and it was also a perfect trip. Sat right behind the 4 and 1, let them do the dirty work, and had every opportunity to just fly by this field and did it. So I would be a little concerned if I was someone on that horse going forward.
And Charlie, Moira got a little drifty there too in mid-stretch, which is not usually a good sign. I mean, it was an exciting race, Paul. These are two really any of us would love to have partial ownership of either one of these horses, but I realize this race was longer than the Spackler race, so it's apples and oranges. But just, I know you're big on visual handicapping like I am, Paul. These just seem like nice, grindy, talented horses. But when they face, like really good Euros, I just don't see it in 2.5 months. But, congrats to Moira for digging in for sure.
Yeah, and I thought Moira ran huge in the previous race in the
Agreed.
Diana. I believe
agree.
it was the Diana, right? I
Yes.
thought she ran, but she is the type of horse, though. I don't think, regardless of who she's in with, she's tough to leave out. She does show up every time, and I'm not saying she's going to win the Filly and Mare Turf. I'm saying that if I have vertical tickets, she's going to be on them because she is a tough cookie. And although this was, and I agree with you, Charlie, I thought Favrova ran well, and I actually, I had just played a little pick 3, and it would have been much better for Favrova to win. And I said, when Favrova rebroke there, I thought she might be home. And remember, she won this race last year.
Yes.
Favrova. So, and you're impressed that I said she, Howard.
That was good.
So thank you.
Especially if I don't have a drink next to me, so that would have been a problem.
But 5 horses here and 6 horses in the million, and then there was the Secretariat. Look, I don't want to see weak cards on big days for anyone. Even though so, although yesterday turned out to be a real paradise for us bettors, but it's just, poor Ellis took their big card and they decided they'd move it to Sunday when they set their schedule this year. And now all of a sudden they're bumping up against the Colonial card. It's only in horse racing, right? You're trying to keep track of, I don't know if I've got one race at Ellis, and on a regular Sunday, I'd have been going back and forth with Saratoga. So, yeah, but I moving forward, Moira is the horse you want, obviously, but I wouldn't think that's their plan, though. I mean, Kevin Attard he's not afraid to ship her and run her.
Yep, it's gonna be interesting to see where they might get one more start up at Woodbine in early October. I know they've got a big day there, and then go to Del Mar. We'll see. New person in the chat, at least I've not seen this person. Doctor Don't Pass One. Interesting moniker. I'm a regular. Great content. Thanks. What's up, Doctor? Not the only doctor that watches the show, apparently, right, Paul? Got a few doctors that watch the show.
He's clearly not an internist who deals with kidney stones, because you'd never have that as your moniker.
Oh boy, yes, I agree with that. Guys, a lot of fun. A lot of great ones that we recapped. Charlie, these horses basically only have one more start, or at the most 2 more starts before the Breeders' Cup. And Charlie, I'm sure you'd agree with this, and feel free to expound as we end the show. You got to watch these races if you're interested in the Breeders' Cup at all, or the BCBC contest or anything. It saves you a lot of time, Charlie, of handicapping, replay watching in a few months, and it really gives you an indication of how one horse would fare against another, when they don't face each other too often. So you got to pay attention, to these final races for the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar in early November.
No, I completely agree. And I think the other thing, like you mentioned, that you have to pay attention to is not just, when they ran, watching who they ran against, but also paying attention to the conditions of the surface, as well as, the size of the fields. Because as you touched on, I mean, certainly something important. I know some people in the chat talked about it, is some horses obviously naturally like when the turf is less firm than others. So that could have played into the numbers. And then also, again, based off of, the pace setup, like we talked about with Carl Spackler, the size of the field, I think that was an unfortunate common theme this weekend where, yeah, we saw some great grade 1 racing in terms of there are some quality horses. These were also much smaller and weaker fields than what we'll actually see come Breeders' Cup. And for me, at least, it's something where obviously, as much as you want to look into some of these Americans, it's hard not to have to factor that in to weigh some of them down a little bit when you're comparing some of these potential, horses that are shipping in. And one thing I just want to briefly touch, I know this is kind of out of left field, but just because I didn't, say too much about those races. With Nation's Pride, I think it's one to monitor, but I agree with you. I was, all over Measured Time that race when they went up against each other. And I think, the horse could benefit in the aspect that Silver Knot and Measured Time would maybe go at each other on the lead. But I think, as you and Paul said, the distance doesn't make sense. I don't think Integration's a bad horse. I just thought on paper wasn't the same level of Nation's Pride. And then the only other horse I want to say something briefly on is I know you said you were all against Legend of Time and played against that horse. I stayed away from that race because I can't handle betting a single race that Legend of Time is in because I know I'm always going to get sucked into that horse, and I just know the horse is going to disappoint me. And we talked about Mora looking bad in the stretch. I think the worst horse in all the races we covered in the stretch for me personally was Legend of Time because when I saw them turn from home and I saw Carson's run have to work out that tough trip with Dylan Davis, I thought Legend of Time was going to romp in that race off the turn. The horse looked gone and had zero response in the stretch. So while we were kind of critiquing Mora for being a little iffy, I thought Legend of Time for me was if we gave like a biggest praise maybe to Carl Spackler, my biggest disappointment would be Legend of Time. That horse
bigger disappointment than Mischief Magic, Charlie.
I don't even want to. I mean, the only thing I will say to be fair about that horse is you can't miss the break in a sprint, and I don't disagree. But like, what was the excuse for Legend of Time? The horse got a perfect trip and and looked like a freak overseas, and then has just been not the same horse in America. Just hasn't.
Yeah, I've been saying it a few times. I just think he's an average horse, Paul. But again, we're criticizing Integration and Legend of Time. These are serious horses. It's just they're not as serious. They're just not as serious as others. So I don't want to give too much disrespect. Guys, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Really appreciate you guys being on. Charlie, good to have you on. I know your life schedule's changed a little bit, so we look forward to seeing you perhaps a little bit more. I know you got to gear up for OSU football and other things on weekends, but we know that you're going to do awesome for your senior year at the Ohio State University, and we're excited for you. And your internship went well. And Paul, I know you're going to be at Saratoga. About 2 weeks for the Travers week and a half. They just came out with the possible entries. Wow, that is going to be a serious war. And also, speaking of Saratoga, last thing, Charlie, you guys are covering the Alabama card this Saturday with your Bet and Boozin' boys on Wednesday. So Bet and Boozin' gets a little piece of Saratoga this weekend. Charlie, that's going to be a great card. The Grizzly Bear, though, is going to Torpedo Anna, is not going to be in the Alabama, Charlie. She is going to take on the boys in the Travers. 2 fun weekends coming up, Charlie, at Saratoga.
Yeah, no, I love it. I'm excited. And yeah, for people, who haven't really gotten to see my face as often because I've been busy, as well as also, getting to have my, picks and exposure since I've been busy with work and just this summer as a whole. Like you touched on, we're covering Saturday, and also a little heads up to everybody, but I will be covering Saratoga on Friday. And for those of you who paid attention to the last Power Picks I got to cover, I would say humbly that my spot plays didn't do bad. I think I was 3 for 4. And as the card as a whole, I think my picks did decent. So don't know if I'll match it, but I'll certainly try. So be on the lookout for, Ben and Boozin' show on Wednesday for Saturday show, and then my Power Picks on Friday. You'll get a lot of exposure to me this week. I'll tell you that much.
Awesome. We look forward to it, Charlie. For my good friend Paul Halloran and Charlie Freeman, this has been Howard Kravitz, episode 32 of Horsin' Around. Crush your bets wherever you play this week. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
If you have not followed his Triple H Horse Racing podcast, you're missing out. It's one of the best podcasts in the country.